Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this session about diplomatic entrepreneurship. I invite you to join, have a seat, and relax while we'll talk about the society of tomorrow, a society who will insist on the notion of fairness and respect together with peace. What is diplomatic entrepreneurship? So basically, it's trying to apply the laws of entrepreneurship, but in diplomacy. So we have heard a lot about solutions for planet. It's time to talk a little bit about solutions for the living togetherness. How to have disruptive ideas when it comes to peace process. How to try to create better understanding, especially when politics are trying to deal with a notion of dual worlds, working with the notion of enemies. This is what you will discover with the two great guests that I have today, and I will ask them to join me on stage. I will first ask Mrs. Ambre Eyoum, who is a diplomatic advisor for the French President's Special Envoy for IMEC project. Ambre, thank you so much for coming. And I will invite Mr. Shai Friedman, who is the CEO of the 50/50 initiative process. Thank you so much, Shai. Let's talk together and try to see how we can think about another way to get along. Because, of course, talking about nature has to go along solutions when it comes to a better world and mutual understanding. As you understand today, diplomacy is still at the hands of politics when it comes to public service. And as you see, tensions arise, and sometimes we wonder where will it stop when it comes about egos and difficulty of understanding. We always wonder, okay, but when will war stop, and when will politics will really be interested in quiet things down more than putting the conflicts at the front? Well, those two people you have in front of you are remarkable because their project that they are carrying is dangerous, because it goes around some ideas that people are thinking or defending from a political way, because they are trying to go further than simply thinking about the other as an enemy. I would like to ask Shai first to introduce himself and tell you more about the initiative called 50/50. Shai, please.
Hi, you can hear me quite well. Thank you everybody that took their time to stay with us over here. I know that we've been delayed a couple of times, so thank you. And thank you for inviting us. So a little bit about 50/50 Startups. 50/50 Startups started in 2019. We're a project that consists out of partnerships between Palestinians and Israelis in the tech industry, in the entrepreneurship realm. What we do is we bring entrepreneurs from Palestine, Arab Israelis, and Israelis together into the entrepreneurial realm. What we do is we support their activities through programs that start from the ideation stage to the proof of concept, the POC stage, then take them to an extensive boot camp of 2 weeks abroad and make them realize and experience being equal strangers in a different country. And we try to bring them from the POC to the MVP, to the minimal vital product stage. And after that, we support them until they get seed money. Our gain out of it is to try to bring people from both sides to work together. And we believe that partnership in business is something that is sometimes as powerful and sometimes more powerful than a partnership in private life. So this is what we bring to the table.
Thank you very much. And I think it's remarkable because trying to unite those two types of populations within companies, and this is what we're trying to do with diplomatic entrepreneurship, is not something easy, as you understand. My name is Gila Clara Jesus, and I'm working as a UNESCO Artist for Peace, but also as a coach. And I had the chance to coach multiple companies in which they have I would say, different populations who are considering themselves like enemies united together. And this is what 50/50 is doing. I would like now to ask Ambre Youm to introduce herself and tell you more about this fantastic project called IMEC. Ambre, please.
Thank you, Clara, and thank you for this opportunity to participate to this panel about a fascinating topic relating diplomacy and entrepreneurship. So as you said, I'm a diplomat, and to make the connection with the topic, I started my career in the private sector, in the energy industry, and I recently became a senior civil servant working on what we call on the other side, economic diplomacy, and from private sector, maybe business diplomacy. And this also gave me the opportunity to highlight that France has been the first country to nominate a special envoy for IMEC, India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, which I will detail later. And this special envoy is a former industry veteran. This is Mr. Gérard Mestrallet, who has been the executive chairman and CEO of GDF Suez and then NG for more than 20 years. So one of the key aspects of IMEC is to navigate between public and private sector, and having profiles that have experience in both sectors is key. Why? IMEC is a logistic and commercial corridor which has been launched on the sideline of the G20 summit in New Delhi in September 2023 by 8 countries: the United States, India, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, the European Commission, France, Italy, and Germany. And on the Memorandum of Understanding, there are 2 other countries mentioned, Israel and Jordan. So you also may capture the geopolitical aspect also of this project, which was following 3 key geostrategic objectives by the signatories. From the US, mainly from the US diplomacy, the objective was to have an instrument, a connectivity transformative project to create connection between Israel and Arab countries to follow the Abraham process. And we were before October 7 and the beginning of the war. And this is important. That was before, the context before the beginning of the war. The objective also was to develop new corridors, new routes to compete with the China Belt and Road Initiative, mainly from the US and India. And from all the signatories, there was a real interest to develop new partnerships with BRICS, and particularly India. So of course, IMEC is infrastructure, but it's also creating connection and bridge between people and culture.
Excellent. As I was telling you earlier, I'm an executive coach, and I had this idea of diplomatic entrepreneurship because while I was, dealing with trainings or coaching in very big companies, I saw that Pakistanis and Indian population could get along because of working together. And I feel like companies today, private sector, is really a place where we can reshape, I would say, a virtuous, not a virtual, but virtuous diplomacy. So it can be like, I would say, another way to wait when it comes to power in order to work with the population and teach the respect that needs to be done when it comes to peace process. So there is an entire phase, I feel, of education when it comes to private sector. Ambre, could you tell us a little bit more about how you envision this IMEC project being a partnership between private and public sector? Because this is what is fascinating, is that you involve private sector together with public sector in order to create alliances and reshaping geopolitical.
Yeah, so first of all, it's important to mention that IMEC is both a concept and a project. Some aspects are still very conceptual and need to be done. There is no collective governance yet. There is the financing part of the project that need to be outlined, and feasibility studies also. But from the concept, and the baseline was to create connectivity with maritime routes. So you have a first leg of IMEC from India to the Gulf, which is maritime. You have a land route with railways and roads until Haifa, and then you have another maritime route from the Mediterranean until Marseille. But several strategic sectors will be involved for IMEC because its connectivity also related to digital connectivity, undersea cables, for instance. This is also energy hubs connecting, for instance, region which will be key exporter for hydrogen. So IMEC will also be an energy corridor. So you have this strategic sector, and this is about leveraging existing project or helping and fostering investment development for the different companies involved. So part of the mandate of the Special Envoy in France is to mobilize the French sector, and we have a lot of multinational companies that already work around this route. And our idea is to capture what could be done on the short run, but IMEC is a long-term project. It's a connectivity project for the next century. So the key milestone also will rely on private investors, but also on the knowledge that private companies may have on the various regions in the Gulf, in the Mediterranean, and so on.
At ChangeNOW, we love innovations, and I'm so grateful that ChangeNOW accepted to have this roundtable about diplomatic entrepreneurship, because it's really entrepreneurship not only about changing nature, but changing people and people's mind in particular. When it comes to people's minds, it's just remarkable that you, Shai, have a partner who is Palestinian and that you don't hate each other. Could you tell us a little bit, not only why is it possible, but also
we
how
hate each
hard
other
it
in
was?
work-related things. We don't hate each other personally. My partner, we actually tried to bring him in here, but it was too short notice to do that. 50-50 Startups is around the concept as we do stuff in partnership. So as I'm the CEO, he's the head of the program. His name is Marwan Mikbil. If for some reason you're hearing me, if this is transmitted to somewhere, then I wish you could be here. We've worked together for the last 7 months, and we've seen each other only for 2 weeks. The situation in our area is very complicated, and he's not able to get in the country. We only seen each other abroad. So I'll tell you a little bit about his story. He started up as a kid who doesn't know the other side, and was having strong feelings, not very positive ones, about the Israelis in the area. And he came to a program that speaks about getting to know the other side. He hated it. He didn't have a good time, but that was like a door opener to him. But he was obviously wanting to get more information. And I'm 43 in 2 weeks' time. I've experienced life without the Palestinian Authority, with the 2 minutes of peace we had in the area. I've known people that are from the other side. I've met them in person before this happened. People that are 30 and below don't have any chance of meeting one another. Not even, I'm not talking about hate in proxy. I'm talking about hating in person for actual reasons. We're talking about not hating each other. I'm saying I don't have any opportunity to actually interact with people and to know them and to get to know them and to care about them. Caring about them goes both ways, obviously. So what we try to do in the program is actually create the platform for that. And if we're talking about diplomatic entrepreneurship, we're doing it as in a non-official NGO way of doing it. We're taking it into our own hands, and we're trying to create new ambassadors of this idea.
Do you consider yourself, Shai, as a resistant while working with diplomatic entrepreneurship?
Resistance to what?
Resistant to public opinion. That couldn't even imagine, that there would be a pacific reunion.
I'll tell you what. Public opinion changes with the time, with the zeitgeist, with how things are. As you might have known, the situation is much more aggressive as it was a year and a half ago from both sides. And things change for the best, for the worst. We're here to do whatever we're doing. We're here to bring people together. We're here to make people have the opportunity to interact with one another and to be partners in ideas and partners in creation of new position, new jobs, and do positive things together. So in that sense, yes, but on a larger scale, politicians and politics change and the sentiment changes. We are trying to do our best to make that change in a way that we think is the right way to change it.
positive. So unfortunately, we would love to hear a lot, from both of you. You're very inspiring, but we don't have that much time. Why don't we finish with this notion of message? What would you like to say today at the Grand Palais during the ChangeNOW Summit? What could be, something that you would like people to remember, and also as an advice maybe, or something that could be helpful for a new tool creating peacemaking with the public and the private sector? Ambre, please.
First of all, to connect IMEC with peace process and people, I would like to mention the work of one NGO which is called EcoPeace Middle East, which is based in Palestine, in Israel, and in Jordan, and they have projected the concept of IMEC in the peace triangle to see what could be the positive effect for peace process and to help people working together. So I had the chance to discover their work while they were gathering in Cyprus for the first time outside their country because it was too dangerous. And you see that this concept for some people is key, and it could be an instrument for peace, prosperity, and development. And this is also the vision that we are pushing with the French Special Envoy, that behind infrastructure, there will be positive effects for interlands developments, and the challenge will also be to reconnect people and territories that has been divided over the past years. On the long run, I think that IMEC is a good example when you want to project economic development and project, but it's a long-term project. So we really face from time to time this criticism to say it doesn't make sense to have a route in the middle of a conflict. Of course, we are not talking about implementation in 2 years or 3 years. We will have feasibility study, and then the implementation will be for the next decades if it happens. So focusing on long run, but I think having a holistic approach is very important. This is why this kind of platform are very useful. Other platforms like the Paris Peace Summit, where you have civil society, public sectors, and also private sectors, combining their views, working with international organizations. The international banking also will have a role for this kind of project. So we need to work together to push for this kind of ambition.
Yeah, transversal alliances between private and public sector, between what we're calling the street and the top of the pyramid. What could be your message, Shai?
I think I want to add to what you said quite beautifully. I think that if we don't work with one each other, we're bound to be bound next to each other in a not so positive way. I think that if we're looking at a ChangeNOW summit and what our message could be is be more proactive, talk less, do more. That's a good way to start doing anything in life.
Yeah, I like that, this notion of talk less and work more. Yeah, that's very, very inspiring. We have time for an ultimate question, and I would like to ask to each one, if you had to do something that would be the turning point for changing now, what would it be? After all, the ChangeNOW Summit is all about solution, innovation, disruptivity for a good planet. So if we have to think about something that all of us should do in order to change now, what could be this thing? So we understood that, of course, knowing more about your initiatives is something that could be done. We understand that we need to do things more than talking about it. But what could be a very small action, something like a small step that each of us could do in order not only to spare the planet, but to spare the people? And I think this today is an emergency that people don't realize. Spare the people. Ambre, what would be your idea?
Well, so I work for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I think what we are trying to do is to have peace in the two regions of the world, and this is very important. But I think, as I was mentioning, the holistic approach, and you use the word enemies in the introduction, I think you have to push the boundaries, talk to your neighbor. From time to time, it's very challenging, but also approach people that think differently and try to expand the view and be more open. I think it's a first step to develop an innovative approach for the benefit of all.
Excellent. So really exploding the notion of clan, the notion of identity when it comes to a group, exploiting that in order to have the capacity of alterity. Beautiful, thank you, Ambre. What would be this small step that each one of us can do?
Look, we are both, I mean, we're all polluting the same air. We're both, throwing garbage to the same ecosystem. At the end of the day, sorry for my French, shit that we make other people, suffer from is something that all our environment is suffering from. And I think we need to understand that there's a bigger picture to this. And we're in this together whether we like to acknowledge it or not. So, yeah, I'm sorry. She was doing quite great herself. She doesn't need any more on top of that.
So I would say, in order to get a summary, Ambre will be more about the alterity, and you will be more about opening the frame in terms of the big picture in order to understand
exactly.
that each one of us are linked. And I would say one of the key words for this is interdependency. Interdependency more than notion of dependency or counterdependency. We are not like here in order to face each other as enemies. We are not depending on each other, but we are really interconnected whether we like it or not, because what happened to my neighbor risks to happen to me, even if I hide myself very well. This is something that definitely can happen to me. I thank you very much for your active listening. I thank very much my two guests who are so inspiring, who are doing wonderful work in order to change the face of the world, make it less violent and more of a world of understanding. And I wish you an excellent evening.
And thank everybody that had the audacity to stay here. I know this is the last session. Thank you very much for staying in.
Thank you for your attention. Thank you for the invitation.